Thank you. So I am an associate professor here at Lehigh in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and my research is on the prevention of waterborne disease. So I look at ways to make our drinking water cleaner, and one particular focus of my research is on water treatment technologies for developing countries. So what I'm hoping to accomplish in the next 10 minutes is to make you aware, if you weren't already, that we are in the midst of a world water crisis, and to talk about my approach, what I think our approach should be in order to solve that. And it follows very nicely from the last talk, which wasn't planned, which is that we have to work together to do that. People, to do great things, you can't work alone, and that's really the goal of what I'm trying to say here. So this image shows you the volume of water that we have available on Earth and compares it to the size of our Earth. And when you look at this image, you might immediately think, wow, we don't really have that much water. But it's a little bit deceiving. That sphere of water on this image is actually quite large. And it has a diameter of about 860 miles. So that's a lot of water. But this includes all of the water that we have on Earth. So it's the water that's in our atmosphere, it's the water in our oceans, in our freshwater lakes and rivers and streams, in our groundwater, locked in glaciers, even in our bodies. So not all of that water is available for drinking. And that's what I'm going to focus on here. If you think about the water we can tap into for drinking, and for our purposes I'm talking about fresh water, surface water, and groundwater, it's really about 1% of that sphere. So it's actually not all that much. And as our world population continues to grow, the amount of water available per person is going to continuously decrease. And as we continue to generate waste, the quality of that water is also going down. So this map was derived from the United Nations Development Fund. And basically what it's showing you, the color coding, is the percent of the population that has access to an improved water source. So an improved water source is a water source that goes through some form of treatment before you consume it. And we're very lucky to live in a part of the world where almost all of us can turn on the tap and we have safe water. But if you look at this, you can see there's a large proportion of our globe that does not have that luxury. Areas where this is a really big issue are Africa, parts of Asia, and then Central and South America. So some staggering statistics, these are from the United Nations, are that there's about 1 billion people in the world who do not have access to safe water. So considering that our global population is now right around 7 billion, that's 1 in every 7 people on Earth do not have access to safe water. And twice that number of people, so almost 2 billion people, don't have adequate sanitation, which means the water that they are using, they're making dirty by washing or cooking, bathing. All of that dirty water goes back into the environment without being treated. It also means that the garbage that they're producing, the human waste they're producing, also goes into the environment. So that when it rains, that all gets washed into the waterways. And the end result is that our water supplies are getting dirtier over time. So this is not a cycle that's likely to end anytime soon. This means that about 2 million people die every year because of water-related diseases, and that translates to more than 5,000 people per day, and about 90% of those people are children under the age of 5. So it's pretty staggering. It's estimated that at any one time, about half of the world's hospital beds are occupied by people suffering from a water-related disease, and also about half of the developing world population is suffering from a water-related disease. And that leads to over 400 million school days lost every year, also work days lost by their parents. So it's affecting not only quality of life, but also productivity and poverty. And it's a cycle of poverty and sickness that needs some intervention in order to change. Okay. We are at no loss for technical solutions to this problem. There are solutions that have been designed from the most basic, where all you need is a bucket and the sun, to very, very complex, sophisticated systems where you're looking at materials that filter at the nanoscale. Every part of that spectrum, we have some sort of technology that's been designed. And yet we still have this problem. And my point is that technology alone is not going to solve this issue. This is an issue that needs a more holistic approach, and we absolutely need to be working together. So to give you some examples of this, I'm going to use one particular technology that I'm very familiar with, which is the biosand filter. I do a lot of research on this filter. And so this is a schematic of it. This is, you can see the size of it. It's about the size of a small child. So on me, it comes up to about my waist. It's about 1 square foot in plan view. And it's basically a concrete box, and it's filled with sand and gravel. That's it. And all the user has to do is pour dirty water in the top. It filters through the sand, and you get clean water out of the effluent pipe. It's been shown in numerous field and lab studies to be very effective. It reduces bacteria, parasites, all different sorts of pathogens. It has an effect on waterborne diarrheal disease. It's an effective technology and super simple. So there are some manufacturing and distribution costs associated with this, which has limited its distribution worldwide. But you would think, if we can overcome those, so if somebody could donate these to a community where they don't have to pay anything, you just give it to the community, and this is a community that's suffering from waterborne disease, they would use it. Common sense would tell you, of course they would use it. You've given it to them, they'll use it. And maybe you're not surprised by this, but I was surprised that no, that's not always true. So what you're seeing here, this is a biosand filter that was given to a community in Honduras a couple years after Hurricane Mitch hit in 1999 and damaged the town's water supply system. So a humanitarian group came in and gave them a filter. And then we came in a couple years later, and this is what we found. In a town of 120 households, there was 1 filter left, and this was it. It was crammed in a corner, it was taken apart, it was not being used. This is a town that was suffering from water-related diseases. The doctor told us 50% of the cases he saw were people who were suffering from diarrhea related to contaminated water. And yet, they were given the filter and nobody used it. Why? Well, this is a poor community and they have a lot of problems. So water is just one of them. And the money they could get from selling the filters was more beneficial, they thought, higher priority, than clean water. So a lot of them sold the filter. Another issue is that this community didn't believe, some of them didn't believe that the water was the source of the disease. Because the water actually didn't look all that dirty, but water doesn't have to look dirty to be contaminated. So they didn't think their water was an issue. And again, they would get rid of the filter, sell it, or use it as a tabletop. They weren't getting used. So obviously there's some education component that has to go into this. You have to be able to explain to people not only how your technology works and how they should use it and maintain it, but why should they use it? Why is it worth their time and their effort? Why is it worth a behavior change to do this? What impact is it going to have on their lives? As an engineer, I will be the first to admit, that's not my skill set. How do I design an educational campaign? I could probably come up with some things that should be in the content of the educational campaign, but who am I to say who should deliver that? It probably shouldn't be the rich white engineer. It should probably be somebody respected in the local community, but who is that? It probably, from one community to the next, might depend on whether this should be written material, oral material, whether it should be delivered in the schools, household to household, in community meetings. The way you deliver these campaigns is going to vary from one community to the next, and engineers who develop the technical solutions are not the ones to figure that out. You have to work with people who understand how to do that effectively, and that was a big problem in this case. Switching gears for a moment, one thing in my lab that we've been doing for the past couple years, this is the concrete filter. One problem with this, I mentioned they're big. When they're filled with water and sand, they weigh about 300 pounds. So getting these out to people who live in very remote regions can be a challenge. And they're also, they're a little bit costly in terms of their manufacturing and distribution. They can cost anywhere from about $30 to $100 US to manufacture and distribute, which doesn't sound like a lot when you think there's no consumables, you don't have to buy anything afterwards. But for people who live on $1 a day, that's a lot. So you can't really distribute these without some sort of subsidy, some sort of subsidized program. So in my lab, we're looking at ways to scale it down. We've scaled it down into a 5-gallon bucket size and a 2-gallon bucket size to see if we can make these smaller and cheaper and get them out to a larger global market. And you can't really see here, the lighting's not that great, but this is water that came out of, this is the starting water, And this is the water that came out of our concrete filter and then our bucket filters. And you can see they're working really well. So my thought as an engineer was, let's make them as cheap as possible. Let's design it so these are as cheap as possible so everyone can afford them. That'll have the biggest impact. And I was shocked to learn when I went to a conference that that's absolutely the worst thing that you could do. If you make these cheap so that the poorest of the poor can afford them, the middle class won't want them because they have a stigma associated with them that they're for poor people. And the poor people don't want them because they don't want to be stigmatized as being poor. So you have to market these and price them so that people value them, that they can earn it if they work for it, but they can't, it's not just a given that they're going to be able to have it. Again, as a technical person, as an engineer, that's not my skill set to figure out how do you market these, how do you price them so that people will want the technology and they'll use it. You have to work with people who can understand that aspect of the project and market and distribute these things accordingly. And the last thing I just want to talk about is community participation. You really, really need to work with the community and hear what they have to say. What are their community perspectives on water? How do they use water? What are their behavioral and social norms around water collection and water use? What are their local materials that are available? What can they afford to pay? All of this information is really important in order to design an effective solution. And yet usually the people you want to be talking to are the women, because women tend to be the water managers. They're the water fetchers, they're the water users. They know the most about water systems. But in a lot of these communities, it's a patriarchal society getting to the women and getting them to feel comfortable talking, asking the right questions, framing the questions so that they feel like they can give a good answer. It's very challenging. So you have to work with social scientists who can help you figure out how to do this in a culturally sensitive way, how to ask the questions, how to design the survey questions and implement the survey so that you're actually getting the information you intended to get. This is all really very specific skill set, again, that a technical engineer doesn't have. And so I'll just finish by saying, if this is our goal, and I think most of us who go into these projects, we are good-hearted and good intention. We want to bring clean water to people. But if this is the goal, we have to work together, because bringing safe water to people, there's a whole lot of other issues that have to be considered. It's not just the technology. And we have to start thinking about these projects as multidisciplinary, holistic efforts. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you.